Big news here because we are just learning that the U.S. and China have finalized a TikTok deal, according to a White House official. Big news, obviously, for an app that millions of people used, and some controversy on that, considering that, remember, the Trump administration, there was that law that effectively banned TikTok from the U.S. because of security concerns. The administration has basically pushed that deadline. Let me get to Monica Alba, who's behind this late-breaking reporting, literally in the last 8 minutes at the White House. She has scrambled to a camera on this. Okay, Moni, talk us through it. What is the deal? What is it?
Okay, so remember a year ago when TikTok briefly went dark, there was the panic. We didn't know what was going to happen. There was potentially going to be a nationwide ban. It was just hours before President Trump was going to take office for his second term. And then he signed an executive order essentially punting this down the road, not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 different times. And that was to allow time for the Trump administration and for the U.S. to try to see if it could hash out a deal with China and with ByteDance, which is, of course, the owner of TikTok. And the law that had passed, essentially out of national security concerns, said that ByteDance needed to sell or divest TikTok. And so then essentially the White House said in order to keep it open, they tried to come up with a plan that involved investors that are backed by the Trump administration that would essentially, as we are learning today, if this is all finalized and goes through, would now hand control of the U.S. operations, specifically of TikTok, to this group of investors that then would have several people on the board represented, some American investors in particular, some notable ones connected to Oracle and others, to essentially now have that be controlled again by this group of investors that has been working with the Trump administration. So that punting that we talked about, essentially that would have ended today, January 22nd. So this was the deadline. And again, we're told by a White House official that the U.S. and China have signed off on this, but we are getting no comment yet from TikTok itself, Hallie, on the exact parameters of when this will necessarily be signed. But we do know that President Xi and President Trump certainly have talked in recent months about this, among many other issues.
Can we do a little bit of a quick lightning round here, Monica? Because the answer to some of these questions may very well be we don't know yet, and that's okay. But out of curiosity here, do we know anything more about this group of investors? Who are they?
We do know at least Oracle and Larry Ellison, who is connected to that. That is one of the groups. And then Silver Lake is one of the other groups. Remember, this consortium was sort of talked about and discussed a couple of months ago when we reported on the tentative deal. And it appears to be these same investors, but we don't have the full list or comment from all of them.
Presumably, they're still going to call it TikTok? That's not going to change?
We don't know. I haven't heard that that's changing. Okay. That would be news.
President Trump and the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, as you mentioned, have been having conversations about this. The president reminded everybody on Air Force One on his way home from Switzerland that he's going to China in April. Oh, the over-under on whether this comes up, Monica, what do you think?
I think for sure. I think there is no doubt as long as that trip is on, which, remember, the president had talked about that potentially happening in the last couple of months. There was some discussion about him going around the Lunar New Year in February. Now he is saying he will go in April. And President Xi, for his part, has said he would like to come to the U.S. before the end of this year as well.
2 more quickies for you. And again, not sure, we're just riffing. This is all coming in as it's happening.
That's what we do here. That's what we do.
Exactly. Any change to like the way that people use TikTok? Do we know if it's still going to have kind of a very similar interface that people are used to?
We believe, yes. We believe, according to the tentative deal that we reported on some months ago, the algorithm would be in control by these investors, many of whom are American. So we don't know if there would be changes to that, but some of those questions that were raised about wanting there to be more U.S. control of that seem to be answered by this. But we need to wait and see the specifics on that.
We have also seen over the last year, and even before that, some intense lobbying from content creators, from people who make a living in many ways off of TikTok, off of social media on this. We don't have any idea the impact on those content creators just yet, right?
We don't, but remember that they have come to Capitol Hill to testify. They have absolutely made their case, and they have absolutely pushed to keep the platform up and running. And many of them have applauded the fact that there would be more of a U.S. role in the app.
Monica Alba, tip of the spear on all this reporting. Thank you so much, Monica. Appreciate that. Our Savannah Sellers, I know, doing great work on this topic as well. Thank you.
Always.
And we may see you later on in the show again. Appreciate that.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.